Alrighty, hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, I am Cryptic Coil, and in today's video I am going to do a book review, or as I call them, book report, on James Patterson's novel, You've Been Warned. Okay, this is a standalone novel. James Patterson is famous for the series that he writes, like the Detective Alex Cross series, the Detective Michael Bennett series, the one about the chicks. I don't remember what that one's called. Like First to Die, Second Chance, like that series. I don't know what that series is even called, but he has a number of book series that he writes, and uh, but he also does standalone novels. So this one is called You've Been Warned, and I'm going to go ahead and first let me just show you the photo of James Patterson on the back of the book. Now I'll go ahead and read the tagline on the front and the synopsis on the inner dust jacket, and then I'll go ahead and get into my review, my rating, all that, okay? So, James Patterson, You've Been Warned. The tagline on the front reads, "Fear is just the beginning." And look at that young lady lying down on her side, looking into the camera. Okay. And this is the synopsis on the inside of the dust jacket. You've been nice, very nice. Kristen Burns has lived her life by the philosophy don't think, just shoot. Pictures, that is. Struggling to make ends meet, she works full time as the nanny for the fabulously wealthy Turnbull family, looking after their two wonderful children and waiting for her glamorous life as a New York photographer to begin. When her photographs are considered by an elite Manhattan art gallery, it seems she might finally get the chance that will start her career. You've been naughty, very naughty. But Kristen has a major distraction: forbidden love. The man of her dreams is almost hers for keeps. Breathless with an inexhaustible passion and the excitement of being within reach of her goals, Kristen ignores all signs of catastrophe brewing. Now you've been warned. Fear exists for a reason, and Kristen can dismiss the warnings for just so long. Searching desperately for the truth through the lens of her camera, she can only hope that it's not too late. This novel of psychological suspense is a stunning new achievement for thriller master James Patterson, one of the best-selling writers in history. The New York Sun. Okay, so it's been like 10 years since I read this novel. I just kind of skimmed through it so I could just kind of brush up on things. And uh sorry, and I already forgot like the dude's name. Give me just a sec. Give me just a sec, okay. Michael, okay, that's his name. Okay. So the main character, Kristen, she's young, she's in her mid 20s, and she's a photographer. And something happens at the very beginning of the book, and you're not really sure what to make of it. Basically, she's out on the New York City streets, and she's shooting photos with her camera because she's a photographer, and she catches a photograph of the ambulance pushing a stretcher with a body on it, and it's presumed that the body's dead. But as Kristen takes that photo, she notices movement, and then she notices a hand come out of the sheet, and she can identify that the finger of the person on that stretcher belongs to a woman. And then she starts screaming like, "Oh my god, they're alive, they're alive." And people on the street turn to look at her like she's crazy. And then she wakes up and it's all a dream, and there are hints that it's a reoccurring dream, and you're not really sure what to make of it. Then you start to get to know her life, and basically she's caught up in an affair. She's having an affair with this like one percenter, this like middle aged guy who's like twice her age. His name is Michael Turnbull, if I remember correctly. It says, yeah, Michael Turnbull. And, you know, he's a really wealthy New York City businessman. He's a 1% earner, and she's kind of caught up in a romantic affair with him. He's married. He has two kids. She's actually a full-time nanny for his family, so she looks after his kids. And so personally, I don't like that. Okay, I wouldn't want to be friends with somebody who's secretly sneaking around with a married person. That's not somebody that I'd want to be friends with. And so I have some judgment towards this character, but she's a really likable character. And you can almost put yourself in her shoes because, on the one hand, you can't blame her for her attraction to Michael. He's not some rich dork. I mean, he's actually a cool guy, and he's got, he's definitely got a good business mind going on, but he's also got a decent head on his shoulders. He seems like he's a pretty cool guy, and she absolutely adores his two children. And I can, if you've ever seen the movie Jerry Maguire, where he was talking to Cuba Gooding Jr. about his romance going on with Renee Zellweger, he goes, "But I love her kid. The kid is great." And then Cuba Gooding Jr. is like, "Hey man, whatever you do, don't shoplift the pooch." In other words, he compared the Renee Zellweger's son to a dog. And it's easy to kind of fall in love with something so little and cute is what was the point. And that's exactly what she did. She totally shoplifted the pooches. So even though I have this huge prejudice against the character, I already don't like her, I already can't stand her, because at the very beginning of the book you find out that she's having an extramarital affair with a married man, and she's an aspiring homewrecker. I already don't like her, but as you continue to read through the book, you actually kind of like her. You learn to like her. You can kind of, if you don't have empathy for her, you can at least find a place in your heart to offer her sympathy. Ultimately, I just don't like the character at all. But I don't want her to get hit by a bus either, is what I'm trying to say. And then you find out that here's the other thing. So she's like a strong, independent woman, right? And so even though she's got the affection of this, really, really rich guy, and she's young and she hasn't had time to build up her own wealth just yet, and she's still grinding and struggling to make it in this world, she totally rejects all of his offers to help. Like, this guy is so rich that he offers to get her own place, and she's like, "Oh no, I couldn't ask you to do that." And she actually means it, because it's fiction. She actually means it. But if Michael Turnbull did, in fact, if he was serious and he was totally willing to get her own place, his wife and family, they would never know. If I had to pay for someone else and their living expenses and their home, I'd feel it. Michael wouldn't, because he's on a different financial level. And so you deal with a lot of that going on. Then you get to meet Michael's family, okay, and his kids are great. If you read this novel, you're absolutely gonna love his kids. You're absolutely gonna love them. because they're great kids, and you can totally see why these kids make Michael look so much more attractive to Kristen than he would if he didn't have these kids. And so that kind of helps you see where Kristen is coming from, even if you dislike her as much as I do. Then you meet Michael's wife, and she is awful, just absolutely awful, and makes me not want to ever get married, straight up. Well, I mean, at least not get married to someone like that. Do my absolute best to ensure that whoever I marry isn't like that and doesn't have a very high chance of turning into someone like that. And so then you get to a part where you start to actually root for Kristen. Like, oh, I hope you do manage to wreck her home and steal her husband and her kids, because this woman is just awful. And then you start to learn the resentment between Kristen and Michael's wife. Or his wife's name is like really weird. I think it's like Petunia or something. I think I've heard that name before on like a Nickelodeon cartoon. I want to say it was Hey Arnold, but I've never known anybody with that name in real life. Anyway, Petunia seems to have absolutely no clue what's going on under her nose, behind her back with her husband and her nanny. And she one day approaches Kristen and says, "Hey, you're a lovely young lady. You don't have a boyfriend. There's this young man who goes to my gym. I think she does yoga or something." And she's like, "I think that you two would be a perfect pairing. I would really appreciate it if you went out." So she sets Kristen up on this blind date, and it's just totally awkward. And so when Kristen isn't providing duties as the Turnbull family nanny, and when she's not sneaking around with Michael, she's all working her camera, taking photographs, trying to make a name for herself as a photographer, and she's getting by, but she wants more. And then her photographs start to the story kind of turns supernatural, in part due to her photographs. And there's also that hint at the beginning of the book where she takes a photo of that person being hauled away on the stretcher by the ambulance, and you really don't know where it's going. There was no way for me to predict how this book was going to end. But I will say the ending gets pretty intense. And that's about all I can say about the plot without getting into spoilers. So now I'm going to give this book my ranking and my final thoughts. So my ranking for the book is I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 stars. So it's middle of the road. One thing that I will tell you about this book is that I managed to read it in 2 days. I managed to read it in 2 days on days that I work. And at the time when I was reading this book, I was working 12-hour shifts. And I managed to kill this book in 2 days. Okay? That's how much I enjoyed the experience of actually reading the book. The reason I'm only giving it 3 stars, even though I enjoyed reading it that much that I devoured it and I couldn't put it down, on work days where I spent 24 hours at work within a 2 day period, is because I do not like the way the book ended. I think that it would have probably been cooler if there were no supernatural elements in this book. And I don't say that very often. When I read fiction, I mean, I want to get lost, okay? Give me something supernatural. I don't believe in the supernatural in real life. So if I'm going to immerse myself into a fictitious world, I could go for some supernaturalism. And I kind of got that in this book, but I do not like what James Patterson and Howard Ruffin, Rugen, I don't know how to say that dude's name. I don't like what they did. necessarily. One thing that I will say about them is that even though it's been 10 years, I've never been able to forget about this book. There was the the ending really took everything into the supernatural turn, and once you went in that direction, there was no going back. And then the book concludes with this like narrative from an unknown narrator, and the way the narrator summarized everything and the way they said it, I've never been able to forget it. I've never been able to forget about it. It's something that I think about all the time. It's been 10 years since I read this book, and it wasn't, it by far and large, not my favorite James Patterson book whatsoever. But again, I really enjoyed the experience. Or I enjoyed the journey of getting there. I just don't like where I ended up, and that took away a lot. Um, if I could rate this book lower, I would, because I just disliked the ending that much. If I could rate this book higher, I would rate this book higher because I think that the story was really good and it had so much potential. And that right there is like the definition of middle of the road, and that is why it gets that 3-star rating. Other people, maybe my review, it shouldn't be the be all end all of whether or not you ever get around to reading this, because I think that my own personal taste just came into play here. Other people might absolutely love the way the book ended. I just didn't. But I know that Stephen King fans feel that way about a lot of his books. One of them in particular is called Under the Dome. A lot of people just loved the story. They absolutely loved the story. Then they got to the end, and the ending just kind of ruined it for them. I saw a YouTube video where this woman was talking about that, and she said that she didn't particularly care for the ending, but she really appreciated the journey. And I think that's kind of how I feel here. So if you've read Under the Dome by Stephen King and you know what I'm talking about, that's how I feel about this book. I really did enjoy the story. And I also like the fact that my feelings about the characters were so complex. I really feel like, you know, the character was designed for me to not like. I did not like this aspiring home wrecker, but I could kind of see where she was coming from, and even though I wanted to hate her, I just couldn't. And even the husband, I didn't exactly approve of his actions, but at the same time, I mean, couldn't hate the guy either. Okay, and so I think that this book at least made me feel things that were really complex, and I think that that's really cool. I think that, that's a talent. Uh, I'm not exactly a writer myself, but if I ever do decide to take up writing, I hope I can do that to my readers. All right. Well, I think that that's all I have to say about this book. Again, I really enjoyed the story. I don't like the way it ended. I give it 3 stars just because I didn't like the ending, but I did enjoy the journey, so it left me perfectly in the middle of the road. But I'd be really curious to know what you all think if you've read this book, and if you ever do get around to reading this book, I'd appreciate it if you'd come back to this video and tell me how you felt in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. Horns up. Peace out.